Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the messy, emotional, and honestly super expressive world of conversational English. We're going to tackle two things at once today. First, we'll decode a pretty dense, idiom-packed conversation between two people dealing with a huge life setback. And second, we'll learn this highly effective, almost magical psychological trick to literally lock these new phrases into your long-term memory. It's going to be a fantastic, highly visual journey, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this because, to really understand how native speakers use idioms, we absolutely have to hear them in context. Picture the scene. Bob just walked through his front door, shoulders slumped, looking totally exhausted. I mean, he's had the absolute worst day at work. His wife, Susan, sees him and instantly knows something is terribly wrong. So we're going to run through this exact conversation rapid fire just as it happened before we break it all down. So Susan gently asks, "What's the matter, dear?" And Bob just drops the bomb. He says, "Susan, I got canned today at work." Right out of the gate, boom, our first idiom. Now, obviously, he wasn't literally shoved inside a giant metal can. Getting canned is just a super common, really informal way of saying you got fired. And you can just hear that utter defeat in his voice right there. Susan is totally shocked. She says, "But Bob, you were Peter's right-hand man," meaning Bob wasn't just some random employee. He was Peter's most trusted, absolutely essential assistant, the guy he completely relied on. And Bob bitterly shoots back, "Yes, and he stabbed me in the back." Man, the betrayal here is just palpable. Being stabbed in the back means being betrayed by someone you really trusted. Bob thought he was essential, but his boss completely turned on him. Now notice how Susan tries to shift the energy here. She tells him, "Keep your chin up. Maybe he'll change his mind and take you back." Keep your chin up is such a great visual idiom. Think about it. When people are sad, they literally look down at the floor, right? So Susan is telling him to stay positive, to hold his head high despite the awful news, clinging to this hope that it's all just a temporary mistake. But Bob, he is having none of it. He snaps back when pigs fly. Once he makes up his mind, he never changes it. Besides, I told him off. Bob uses this utterly absurd image of flying pigs to say, look, there is absolutely zero chance of Peter changing his mind. It's totally impossible. And to make things even worse, Bob told him off, meaning he angrily yelled at Peter and criticized him right before leaving. So yeah, that bridge isn't just burned, it is practically vaporized. Susan, playing the ever-supportive partner, tries to pivot again. Look on the bright side. You won't have to set eyes on Peter ever again. She is desperately trying to find a positive spin on this really dark situation. And Bob agrees. Thank goodness for that. You can really feel the conversational rhythm here, right? It's this constant push and pull between Bob's raw anger and Susan trying to reframe the disaster. So Susan keeps trying to encourage him. She says, "Hang in there. I'm sure you won't be out of work for long." Now, hang in there just means don't give up, right? Just push through it. But Bob's mind is already spiraling into the financial reality of it all. He replies, "In the meantime, we'll have to live from hand to mouth." And this introduces a whole new layer of anxiety. Living hand to mouth means barely surviving financially. You're consuming everything you earn immediately just to eat, with literally zero savings left over. Susan tries to counter this survival fear with some reassurance. "Don't get too stressed out, Bob. We'll make ends meet." Meaning, we'll scrape together enough money to pay the essential bills. But Bob's desperation is totally peaking now. He mutters, "I can always get a job at McDonald's as a last resort." He's looking at this as his absolute, final, least desirable option if literally everything else fails. The comedic timing here is almost tragic. Susan completely inadvertently bursts his bubble, saying, "I don't think they're hiring right now." And deprived of even his very last resort, Bob's catastrophic thinking completely takes the wheel. If worst comes to worst, we can sell our home and move into a tent. Like, if the absolute worst possible scenario actually happens, this is his extreme rock-bottom backup plan. So Susan decides to just bypass the pessimism altogether. "Let's think big. Maybe you can start your own business." But Bob shuts it down with a heavy dose of reality, easier said than done, meaning, hey, great idea in theory, but incredibly difficult to actually pull off. And there we have it, a raw, perfectly natural exchange that is absolutely packed with native phrasing. Now, if you're learning English, you are probably sitting there thinking exactly this. That was a lot of idioms. 10 of them, actually, in just under a minute. So how can we possibly remember them all? I mean, it's the ultimate beginner's challenge, isn't it? Just reading them once, not going to cut it. Rote memorization, boring and honestly pretty ineffective. We really need a system. So let's get into the memory palace technique, specifically what we'll call the down and out living room.
The memory palace is this incredibly powerful spatial memory technique popularized by memory expert Tony Buzan. Right now, I want you to mentally visualize your own living space. Go ahead, close your eyes for a second if it helps. Picture the layout, your furniture, the distinct areas of the room. We're actually going to use your own house to lock these idioms into your brain. See, this technique works because human beings are crazy good at remembering physical spaces in really bizarre images. By using extreme exaggeration and linking an abstract concept to a specific physical spot in your home, you completely bypass short-term memory. You create an unforgettable mental anchor. Let's walk through your new living room.
Okay, mentally walk right up to your front door. Look at what's blocking it. It's a giant silver tin can. It's absolutely massive, and Bob is desperately trying to squeeze his way out of it. He's stuck in the can. He got canned. Okay, now step inside onto the rug. Look down. Lying right there on your rug is a giant detached human right hand. It's totally grotesque and huge, and his boss, Peter, is furiously stomping on it because Bob used to be his right-hand man. Remember, the weirder the image, the better it sticks in your brain. Now, what's really interesting here is how we handle abstract emotions. Look over at your sofa. There is a giant, cartoonish knife sticking straight out of the back of your couch cushions. Bob is standing there pointing at it, screaming that Peter stabbed him in the back. Next, glance at the coffee table right in front of the sofa. Resting heavily on that table is this oversized, giant chin. It's got these tiny little muscular arms, and it's sweating profusely, trying to physically lift itself off the wood. And Susan is standing right next to the table, clapping and cheering for it to keep its chin up.
All right, look up at your ceiling. But it's no longer a normal ceiling. A whole flock of fat pink pigs with little white wings is soaring back and forth across the plaster, just oinking super loudly. They're flying right above your head, completely mocking the idea of Bob ever getting his job back. When pigs fly. Okay, look back down at your television. The screen isn't showing a TV show, it's radiating this blindingly bright, burning yellow sun. You literally have to shield your eyes from it. And Susan is pointing at that blinding screen, demanding Bob to look on the bright side. Let's keep moving. Look at your curtains. Someone is literally hanging by one arm from the curtain rod. They're dangling like a monkey, looking absolutely terrified, and you are standing right below them, yelling up, "Hang in there." Now, walk over to the kitchen table. Sitting directly on the table is a giant, disembodied hand and a massive mouth. The hand is frantically, desperately trying to shove food directly into the mouth. It's just this frantic struggle to eat, because this is their reality, living from hand to mouth.
Finally, let's finish up our room tour. Look at your refrigerator. Stretching all the way across the front doors of the fridge are the two giant ends of a really thick rope. They're stretching, straining, trying so hard to touch each other, to tie a knot. They're struggling to make ends meet. And lastly, turn to your bookshelf. Taking up the entire bottom shelf is a massive, heavy book titled How to Be Rich. You reach out to read it, but the book suddenly snaps violently shut right on your fingers. It's showing you, very practically, that the advice inside is easier said than done. And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of this technique. By just taking a mental walk through the front door of your own home, you can perfectly recall 10 complex conversational idioms along with their exact emotional meanings. From the giant can blocking the door, the severed hand on the rug, the knife in the sofa, to the sweating chin on the table and the flying pigs on the ceiling, you have successfully mapped linguistic concepts onto spatial geography. You didn't just study these phrases, you visually experienced them.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. You now have this vivid, down-and-out living room packed with survival idioms. But your house has a lot of rooms. What other room in your house could you use to memorize a completely new list of concepts? Could your kitchen become the ultimate hub for business vocabulary? Could your bedroom hold the secrets to complex scientific formulas? The architecture of your mind is literally limitless, and now you've got the blueprint to start building. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.